The wind, a ceaseless lament across the desolate plains, found every crack in their small cabin, whispering of the coming winter. Clara pulled her worn shawl tighter, the thin fabric offering little solace against the chill that seemed to seep into her very bones. Another autumn day bled into a starless night, and the familiar ache, heavy and unyielding, settled in her chest. 8 years on this unforgiving land with Elias, and the cradle in the corner remained empty, a silent testament to a hope long since withered into dust. Elias, bless his quiet heart, never spoke of it, but the unspoken hung between them like the ever-present dust, thick and suffocating. A wife's failure, whispered the wind, echoed by the barren fields. Their isolation was their protection, yet also their torment. The nearest settlement was a week's hard ride, and even there, the judgment in other women's eyes was a palpable thing. Here it was only the land, Elias, and her own despair. She was sorting dried herbs, the scent of sage and wild thyme a brief comfort, when the sound reached her, not the familiar creak of Elias's wagon, nor the howl of a coyote, but a strange, hesitant shuffling. She froze, her breath catching. No one came this way unless they were truly lost or truly desperate. The shadow that fell across the doorway was not Elias's broad frame. A woman, gaunt and stooped, stood silhouetted against the dying light, a shapeless bundle clutched to her chest. Behind her, like small, frightened deer emerging from the gloom, were figures, too many figures. Clara's heart slammed against her ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage. Her hand flew to her mouth, stifling a gasp that might have fractured the fragile peace of the twilight. The woman stepped forward, and the flickering lamplight caught her face, hollowing out her eyes, drawing stark lines from nose to chin. It was Eliza, her sister, but not the vibrant girl Clara remembered, not the one who had disappeared into the vast unknown years ago without a single word. This Eliza was a ghost, a wraith of a woman, and around her clustered 7 small children, their faces smudged with dust and weariness, their eyes wide and unblinking as they peered into the relative warmth of the cabin. 7. 7 children. The number echoed in Clara's mind, a mocking cacophony against the emptiness of her own womb. Eliza's voice, when it finally came, was a raw whisper, brittle with exhaustion. Clara, just that. No explanation, no apology for the years of silence, no reason for this impossible arrival. The children, ranging from a toddler barely walking to a girl Clara guessed might be 10, clung to Eliza's skirts, some whimpering softly, others merely staring with an unnerving stillness. Clara found her voice, a strained, thin sound. Eliza. Who are these children? Eliza merely tightened her grip on the smallest bundle, her gaze sweeping around the cabin, not with curiosity, but with a desperate, calculating assessment of its meager space, its limited provisions. Elias, drawn by the unusual commotion, appeared in the doorway of the sleeping loft, his rifle held loosely, his brow furrowed in a question that didn't need to be voiced. His eyes met Clara's, then moved to Eliza, then slowly, deliberately, counted the small, hungry faces. He said nothing, his features impassive, but Clara saw the subtle tightening of his jaw, the almost imperceptible clenching of his hands. The air grew heavy, thick with unspoken questions, with the stench of despair and the promise of an impossible burden. The first snowflake drifted past the window, a harbinger of the long, brutal winter ahead. The cabin, once a sanctuary of quiet routine, now thrummed with a chaotic symphony of sniffles, soft whimpers, and the restless movements of too many bodies in too small a space. Elias, with the silent efficiency that defined him, had set about building a makeshift lean-to for some of the older boys, recognizing immediately the impossibility of fitting everyone within the single room. Clara watched him, her chest a knot of conflicting emotions. Her own fear for their limited stores warred with a primal instinct to shield these small, vulnerable beings from the biting cold. Eliza, after her initial, almost spectral entrance, had moved with a quiet, efficient desperation, her every action focused on her children. She rarely met Clara's gaze, avoiding any opportunity for a question, her silence a wall Clara found impossible to breach. The first days were a blur of constant motion. Clara, accustomed to preparing meals for two, now stretched their meager flour and dried beans to feed 10. The children, gaunt and wary, ate with an alarming speed, their eyes darting around the table, as if fearing the food would vanish. Little Thomas, the youngest, cried often, a thin, reedy wail that grated on Clara's frayed nerves. Yet, even in her exhaustion, she found herself observing Eliza. Her sister, despite her own profound weariness, moved with a quiet competence. She knew how to comfort a restless child with a murmured lullaby, how to patch a torn garment with nimble fingers, how to ration food with an almost scientific precision. There was a stoic resignation in her movements, a deep, ingrained knowledge of hardship that Clara, for all her own struggles, had never truly known. Eliza was a survivor, not merely existing, but ensuring the survival of her brood. Elias, true to his nature, said little. He simply worked. From dawn till dusk, he was out in the fading light, chopping more wood than ever before, checking traps, strengthening the cabin against the encroaching winter. He brought in game, meager though it was, and his presence, large and reassuringly solid, seemed to anchor the volatile atmosphere within the cabin. He would watch the children, sometimes, a flicker of something unreadable in his deep-set eyes, but he never pressed Eliza for answers, nor did he criticize Clara's quiet despair. His acceptance, though unspoken, was a powerful, comforting force. Clara found herself drawn into the rhythm of this new, chaotic household. She taught the older girls to mend, shared the warmth of the hearth with the youngest. She found small, unexpected moments of connection. A child's hand slipping into hers for comfort during a sudden gust of wind. A shy smile from the oldest girl, Maeve, when Clara showed her how to braid hair. The initial resentment that had curdled in Clara's gut began to soften, replaced by a grudging admiration, then a tentative empathy. The children were a silent bridge between the two sisters, their very existence demanding a truce, a quiet cooperation. But the question of Eliza's past, the 7 years of silence, the impossible number of children, remained a constant, throbbing presence. Clara longed to ask, to understand, but something in Eliza's guarded eyes, in the way she flinched at sudden movements or loud noises, warned Clara away. The unspoken past hung heavy, a dark cloud promising a storm. The days grew shorter, the nights colder, and the vast, empty plains seemed to press in on their small, fragile island of warmth. The first true blizzard struck with a savage fury, burying the plains under a shroud of white and trapping them within the cabin's cramped confines for days. The wind howled like a banshee, rattling the shutters and seeping through cracks, mocking their efforts to stay warm. The chill in the air was mirrored by a growing unease within Clara. Supplies were dwindling at an alarming rate, and Thomas, the youngest, developed a rattling cough that racked his small frame. His breathing grew shallow, his skin hot to the touch. Fear, cold and sharp, pierced through Clara's carefully constructed composure. Eliza, usually so guarded, began to fray. She held Thomas day and night, her eyes red-rimmed with exhaustion and terror. Her silence, once a shield, now seemed a burden she could no longer bear. One afternoon, as the wind outside reached a crescendo, Thomas's breathing grew impossibly thin. Eliza whimpered, a raw, animal sound, and Clara, without a word, moved to her side, pressing a cool, damp cloth to the boy's fevered brow. Their hands brushed, a fleeting, almost imperceptible touch, yet it was a contact that shattered Eliza's formidable defenses. They wouldn't leave us be, Eliza rasped, her voice choked with tears, not looking at Clara, but staring wildly at the flickering firelight. After he died, his brothers, they said the land was theirs, said the children weren't truly his, that I was a harlot, breeding little beggars on his rightful claim. Her voice broke. They burned us out, chased us, from one place to another, always running, always moving. I lost one, before the last babe, starved, just wasted away. Couldn't. I had to keep the others safe. I knew you were here. The only place left. The words, tumbling out in a torrent of pain and remembered terror, painted a stark, brutal picture. Clara felt the blood drain from her face. Not a single man, but a desperate flight from an entire family, from societal judgment, from the raw, brutal greed of men. The 7 took on a horrifying new meaning, each one a testament to Eliza's impossible struggle, her fierce, unwavering will to protect what was hers. The 7 years of silence, the gauntness, the flinching, the weary competence, it all clicked into place, forming a mosaic of unimaginable hardship. Her sister had not abandoned her. She had been running for her life, for her children's lives. Elias, who had been tending the fire, stopped, his back to them, listening with a stillness that was more profound than any spoken word. He didn't turn, didn't interrupt, but his posture conveyed a deep, unwavering empathy. The weight of Eliza's unspoken past, which had felt like a judgment against Clara, now revealed itself as a testament to Eliza's extraordinary resilience. Thomas coughed again, a weak, shallow sound, pulling them back to the immediate crisis. Clara looked at Eliza, truly looked at her, seeing past the stranger, past the impossible burden, to the terrified, determined woman who had walked through hell to bring her children to this remote, desperate refuge. "He needs warmth," Clara said, her voice steady, stripping a blanket from her own bed. "And we need to get him to sweat. He's burning up. No judgment, no pity, just the practical, urgent call of sisterhood." The blizzard raged outside, but inside, a different kind of storm had broken, clearing the air for the first time in years. The fever broke with the dawn. Thomas, pale and weak, finally stirred, his small hand reaching instinctively for Eliza's. A collective sigh of relief, unspoken but deeply felt, filled the cabin. The blizzard had passed, leaving behind a world transformed by pristine, daunting snow. But the internal landscape of the cabin had shifted even more profoundly. Eliza's words, raw and unvarnished, had stripped away the layers of years, of silence, of unspoken grievances, revealing the stark, shared humanity beneath. Clara no longer saw a desperate, unburdensome stranger, but a woman forged in fire, a sister whose strength had been born of unimaginable terror. The days that followed were not suddenly easy, but they were different. There was a quiet understanding that passed between the sisters, a shared look over a mending basket, a silent acknowledgement when a child needed comforting. Eliza, freed from the crushing weight of her secret, began to emerge from her shell, cautiously, like a flower unfurling after a long winter. She started to speak more, not of her past horrors, but of practical matters, of the children's needs, of shared tasks. She taught Clara methods of stretching their dwindling rations, honed by years of scarcity. She moved with a purpose that was no longer just desperate flight, but a grounded, steady determination to build something enduring here. Clara, in turn, found a new purpose blooming in the barren field of her own expectations. Her home, once so quiet, now echoed with the sounds of children laughter, squabbles, the soft rhythm of small feet. She, who had mourned the absence of children in her life, now found herself surrounded by them, not as a mother, but as an aunt, a guardian, a figure of stability and quiet affection. The emptiness in her womb no longer defined her. Instead, her heart, once shriveled by disappointment, expanded to encompass this new, unexpected family. She was not barren. She was fertile in a way she had never conceived possible, nurturing life, not from her body, but from her spirit. Elias watched it all, his gaze often resting on Clara, a quiet approval in his eyes. He saw the softening of her features, the way her shoulders, once hunched with the weight of her sorrow, now held a newfound strength. He saw the way she soothed a crying child, the way she taught the older girls to read from their tattered Bible. His efforts, once solely for two, now seemed magnified, imbued with a deeper meaning. He had built this home, cleared this land, and now it was full. His quiet, steadfast presence had been the bedrock upon which Clara and Eliza, and all 7 children, could begin to rebuild. The future remained uncertain, as it always did on the frontier. Winter still had its teeth, and the spring would bring new challenges. But as Clara stood at the cabin door one afternoon, watching Elias work and the children play, a gentle, unfamiliar warmth spread through her. The wind still whispered its tales, but now it spoke not of barrenness and despair, but of resilience, of the unbreakable threads that bound them together. They were not just survivors. They were a family, forged in hardship, bound by love, and rooted in the fertile ground of an unspoken, profound understanding. Their home, once a lonely outpost, had become a haven, proving that even in the harshest of lands, life, in its most unexpected forms, could flourish with dignity and quiet optimism.